Shalom Chaverim. Today I want to discuss a verse in Jeremiah chapter 8. I've seen many people bring up this verse and try to say that the Torah is corrupt, the Torah is flawed. Even Hebrew rooters that have actually debated with me on Facebook saying, we can't trust the rabbis. We can't listen to the rabbis. They corrupted the Torah. They wrote lies in the Torah. And it's funny because they claim to follow the God of Israel. They claim to believe Moses, but then at the same time contradict Moshe Rabbeinu. They say that the Torah is flawed, which I don't even understand how someone could say that and believe in and use the Torah for arguments to try to win their debates, but at the same time contradict it. But anyways, I decided, I see this come up a lot, Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, and I just wanted to discuss it and look closely at it. And so let's go to Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, and a lot that are accuse the scribes of writing lies in the Torah will read this verse in English. So, like, for instance, in the King James, let's read it here. It says, how do you say we are wise and the law of the Lord is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain. Let's look at it in Hebrew here. And it says here in verse 8, Echa t'omeru chachamim anachnu v'Torah Hashem itanu echein hine l'shecher asa et shecher sofrim. How can you say we are wise and Hashem's Torah is with us? Indeed, they made the quill for falsehood. The scribes are false. Okay, so let's look at the commentary here for a minute. And it says here, following many commentators, the word lashecher in this verse, literally for falsehood, here means for naught. Although the people argue they have wisdom and they are well versed in Torah, the prophet replies that their Torah knowledge is worthless since they do not fulfill what it says. That's from the Radak. So the Radak says, if the law of the Lord is with you, what good is it if you do not fulfill it? Basically, the same person who made the quill to write it did it all in vain. Meaning, the scribes wrote it for nothing because they did not even follow the instructions of the Torah. This really has nothing to do with a corrupt Bible, but with people who do not follow the instructions, follow the Bible. Let's look more at the commentary here. Here's more commentary. It says, thus the entire verse speaks to those who claim that the Torah's teachings are parables or suggestions that are not binding. And Arbour seems to draw a parallel message to those in his generation who claim to be scholars of the Torah, but consider its words to be merely of literary or of historical value, not relevant to the present. Okay, and the Radak goes on, it says, they made the quill for falsehood. The scribes are false. They're scribes who recorded the Torah in inscribing falsehoods because they do not believe what they write. Alternatively, this continues the claim of the sinners, since they insist they truly understand the Torah. They insist that the prophets, not they, are liars and fabricators. So, this is interesting. There's an important clue that Hashem, through Jeremiah, states in verse 7 that my people do not know the requirements of the Lord. So if we look in verse 7 here, it says here, but my people do not know the Torah of Hashem. And so, what does this mean? Jeremiah, he does not say they do not have them. They do not. Jeremiah doesn't say that they don't have the law of Hashem. What it's saying is they do not even know the law of Hashem. They don't even study the Torah. They just listen to their own rulings, their own falsehood. In verse 8, he takes up the false security of the people who claim that they have the possession of the Torah, that this will benefit them in any way, even if they don't obey it, and if they distort it with their false interpretations. Let's look at verse 10. It says, "Therefore, I will give their wives to others, and their fields to usurpers, from the simplest to the most distinguished. They all extort booty from prophet to priest, and all deal in falsehood. They relieved the impending disaster of the daughter of my people by making light of it, saying, 'Peace, peace,' but there is no peace. Were they ashamed that they had committed abominations? They are not ashamed, nor do they know how to feel humiliated. Therefore, they will fall among the fallen. At the time I attend to them, they will stumble," said Hashem. So what are the scribes doing here? If you read the larger context, you will see clearly that the scribes, priests, and prophets are telling the people that everything is okay, that the law is being kept, and that there will be peace because God is with us, his people. They have the Torah, but they're lying. It doesn't say their lying pens are making the Torah into a lie by altering the text. It says they are writing things that are false, as though they came from God's law. The false writing is the teaching that they're giving to the people. They were lying teachers telling people, "Peace, peace," although there is no peace at all. The true prophet tells them there is no peace. And he says, "and will be no peace." The verse has nothing to do with altering books. It has to do with the teaching of the false practices, the false prophecies, and saying they're based on God's laws. Verse 10 identifies the people, including the scribes, the priests, and the prophets, as greedy for gain. They all extort their booty from prophet to priest, and all deal in falsehood. In the previous chapter, in chapter 7, Jeremiah announces God's judgment against Jerusalem of their own sin and disobedience. The lying pen of the scribes is not guilty of changing the text, but of false application of it. A similar example is actually in Matthew 23. If you look at Matthew 23 in the Gospels here, it says, "Then Yeshua spoke to the crowd of people and to his disciples, saying, 'The scholars and the Prushim that sit in the seat of Moshe, so whatever they tell you, observe and do it. Only be careful not to do as their deeds, for they say things but not do them.'" So here again is an example. Yeshua would never have told the people to listen to the teachers of the Torah, of the law, if the very law they were teaching had been changed or was falsehood in there. And so this is even a testimony of Yeshua himself that tells the people that to listen, to learn the Torah, do what the Torah says. Don't do the actions of these teachers, because the hearts were not living what the Torah says. And so, but they were teaching the Torah. So here, Yeshua is telling them to obey the Torah. And for those that even claim to follow Yeshua and then somehow say that the Torah has been messed up, again, it's just a big hole in their whole, belief system. Anyway, also Nehemiah, also, there's a verse in chapter 8 of Nehemiah. Let me pull it out here. I got all my books here. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 13. It says, "And on the second day, the heads of the families of the entire nation, the Kohanim, the Leviim, gathered to Ezra the scribe and to pay close attention to the words of the Torah. Verse 14, they found written in the Torah that Hashem commanded them through the hand of Moshe that the children of Israel shall dwell in Sukkot, Sukkos, on the festival of the 7th month. And if we go to verse 18, a little bit down more, it says, and he read in the book of God day by day, from the first day until the last day, and they celebrated the 7-day holiday and the Atzeres on the 8th day, according to the Torah, according to the law. So this is actually about 430 BC, about 180 years after Jeremiah's temple address, which took place in 609 or around 608 BC, the first year of the reign of King Jehoiakim, which is in chapter 26, verse 1. And so furthermore, even in Malachi, the prophet Malachi, it says in chapter 3 here in the Jewish Bible, verse 22, look what it says. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him at Horeb for all of Israel, its decrees and its statutes. So here is a clear testimony that the law of God was given through Moshe Rabbeinu, and even the other Nevi'im encourage the children of Israel to continue to learn and obey the instructions of the Torah. There is no lying, corrupt Torah at all. And you see, I don't even get how, if it was a lie, then why? And the so-called rabbis, that the people say, these people that don't believe that that the Torah is true, that the prophet would somehow say, listen, the Torah is a lie, and they forgot to edit that out. I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but this is the true context. You have to take everything in its proper interpretation, proper context. It has nothing to do with the prophets writing lies in the Torah. Everything in the Torah is true. It does not even contradict anything. There's nothing. Yeah, if they were going to lie about something in the Torah, it would probably be to have the children of Israel stray away from Torah, away from the teachings of Moshe, to do idolatry or these things. But the Torah clearly gives good instruction to those that follow it. So anyway, that's just my little input and study of Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. Just thoughts. Have a great week, and Shavua Tov.